think international trade, I've always said in customs in our world, is a sexy world. It's a nonstop, crazy, fun world. And it's a world that I do highly encourage more people to get interested and involved in. There are so many different areas of the practice.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Well, actually, this episode, which and then just so everybody knows, I'm gonna set the stage here. This is one of our special episodes that we like to that we introduced, which is our folks, our SimplyTrade folks, and really happy and excited for this episode, only because I've known our guest for a long time, and I've seen her grow from diapers to where she's now. She's
from a little pup.
Yeah, exactly. And not literally, of course, but anyway. But I've seen her grow. I followed her career for a long time, and really admire her, and I really felt that her story would be really neat. I mean, we know the sassy and the sassy, but you're very outgoing, and you're very involved in the community, and you're an advocate for lots of different things. And speaking of which, and I know this is very personal for you, and I know for everyone, but I know you've been out in public and said that, we support and also feel strongly about what's going on in Israel as well. It's so bad and such a travesty that's going on over there. And honestly, I can't believe that's happening. And it's scary to think that can happen. And I know that's
heartbreaking,
close
terrifying.
To you.
For
yeah,
sure.
Exactly. And I know that's close to you. So anybody, just Andy,
really
you
appreciate those words of support as well. That it does mean quite a bit. We're seeing a lot of support from those that aren't specifically Jewish, and that does mean the most. It's actually really a wonderful thing to hear. So I really do appreciate those words.
Yeah. Well, fun story. Where I live, in the town that I live, most Jewish people in El Paso live in the side of town that I live. And my kids literally grew up with 50% of their friends being Jewish. And so we got invited to a lot of Jewish. I happen to know a lot about the Judaism because of that, and my friends that are Jewish.
So
and
matzo ball soup and gefilte fish, they're not foreign to you.
And all the yeah, exactly. So and then, but also we compare a lot of how our religions are, Catholics and Jewish. I know they're not the same. I know we follow different Bibles and stuff, but it's very similar in the way we hold our masses and everything. It's because believe it or not, I think my daughter, for her quinceañera, she had, I think, 3 Jewish kids in her quinceañera, and they attended church with us, and they followed the rituals, and of course did what they had to without breaking any etiquette of the Catholic Church. But it's funny how they would say that was a lot like when we go,
like a bat mitzvah.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, it was fun. But anyway, so let's go on, Andy. So by the way, we do have Jen Diaz here on our show.
Hi there. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me back.
I really wanted to dig in and talk to you. So with me, I've always been curious. So we have Jen Diaz. I know you're Jewish because you're very active in social, and you're not shy about saying it, which is great. And you're a female. So I'm not going to say there are 3 strikes against you. I like to call it three
and
advantages.
I'm short, Lalo. I'm also really short. I'm also short, so it's kind of like 4.
You're like my wife. I call my wife my chaparrita. So that's you and her are about the same height. That's right. That's right. So being all 3, and I don't know. I'm really fascinated by this. I guess so. Let's start in the beginning. So you are Latina for sure, right?
Sure. I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy to get into some details. I think a lot of people are always mysticized. And when I grew up going to bat mitzvah school, there was Jewish school and such. I grew up on Miami Beach, and within the school, even with my own Jewish school, I was always, "Are you sure you're Jewish? Are you sure? What is Diaz? What's going on with that?" So
right.
if my own Jewish peers at a young age were to say, "Are you sure you're Jewish?" I can only imagine what the world, this day and age especially, thinks and or wonders, because names can be deceiving. So in the Jewish faith, your religion is passed down via your mom, but your last name is passed down via your dad. My biological father is not Jewish. My stepfather, who raised me since I was 12, is Jewish. Their names Diaz, and my stepfather's last name is Melceras, but my mother's maiden name is Walensky. If I was Jen Walensky, nobody would be doubting my Jewish heritage and faith. So my ancestors on my mother's side are Russia, Poland, and they came to the United States many, many years ago. My grandmother actually grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home, and she was a trailblazer. So the sassiness that I have is absolutely guaranteed to come from her line. She was in her mid-20s when she got married for the first time, and she was born in the 20s. So she was an old maid, and she was ridiculed for not needing to get married when she was 19. She worked, always had a job, and sometimes more than one job. She divorced. She moved her kids across the country. She got remarried, and importantly, she also ate pork. She got her Orthodox Jewish mom to try freaking wonton soup. She was like, "I don't know what you guys are doing, just eating this gefilte fish and matzo ball soup and enjoying all this Jewish food, but let me introduce you to Chinese food." My grandma was the one who, on her, in her last years while she was in a nursing home when she needed advanced care, she was the one who wasn't afraid to use a phone book. She called for delivery of Chinese food whenever the hell she wanted. So she was the one, you think I'm eating that cafeteria food? You've got another thing coming, baby. I'm in the mood for my wonton soup today. Not happening. So she was the one who was adventurous, loved cruises, and loved, she's the one who really meant a lot to me growing up and gave me kind of a love for part of our culture. You don't lose your culture. You don't lose Judaism. So most of our events in Judaism tailor around food. So shocking, we're all about food. So that is very similar to all other faiths in regards to gathering around a table and celebrating a meal together when people are happy and or sad, when we're celebrating a marriage, a life, a bat mitzvah, coming of age, a death. It always centers around food and getting together in our culture. So I think that's incredibly relatable. And I've named my daughter after my grandmother, my trailblazer, and hope that continues. So Diaz, and more so in regards to my upbringing, my Cuban stepfather came from Cuba as a teenager, and he came with nothing. And did not have family supporting him when he was here, was in a foster care program, came with an organization called HIAS, which is an organization that is really amazing. And it helps people leave countries that they need to leave and resettle and helps them get a start. And my stepfather really needed that start. And it was really great that they were able to work with and place him in a home that was supportive and able to help him. He came as a teenager, so he graduated from high school. He doesn't have a full college upbringing, but he was a badass entrepreneur. He started from absolutely nothing, cents in his pocket, and he wound up owning stores. He did the import-export thing, the real estate thing, the business thing, the clothing store thing, you name it, he did a thing. There was a thing for a thing for a thing, whether it was real estate or anything. So from him is where I really credit my crazy work ethic, because for him, it was a 7-day-a-week work week as an entrepreneur. If he closed the store, it was for a Jewish holiday. It was a Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or something significant where he was closing the store, and he did it all by himself. There's no one else helping him in his store. It was him he was the one placing the orders. He was doing his merchandising, and you would see his store windows. They were definitely, you know, when a woman has a touch to make a store window really cool and nice, he had boxes and boxes and mannequins in the front, you know, and it looked like a man did it, you know, but the importance for him was always on making sure that I had my faith. Jewish religion was a big deal, making sure I was bat mitzvahed, making sure I went to Israel, making sure I had a Jewish strong education. I actually went to Orthodox Jewish day school for part of my high school experience as well, went to high school in Israel and had a very strong Jewish upbringing. Parts of my life I've actually I don't necessarily truly believe in the categories of Jews, as many say, as many Jews as there are is as many Judaisms as there are. And what's interesting is everyone celebrates differently and embraces the culture differently. I've had a kosher home. I've celebrated Shabbat and kept it. I've had all different aspects of Judaism in my life, and it's very important to me. So now my daughter is in a Jewish day school, and she loves lighting Shabbat candles and eating her challah bread. So it's actually really cool. So we've got a little set for her, and she's like, we must do blessings, you know. It's adorable to see that and to have that live on. So the importance of the Jewish faith is huge to me, and the cultural aspect. So we consistently, when we have Passover, we invite Jews and non-Jews alike at our Passover tables. So Lalo Andy, whenever you want to celebrate Passover or any Jewish holidays, we will throw some plagues at you and we will have a great time, and most importantly, eat really great food and enjoy that time together. So Israel is near and dear to my heart. I've been 4 times, and it's a homeland, and it's considered a homeland to me, and it's a place that I take very seriously, and I'm pretty tortured by what's currently going on, as many are. So it's really a beautiful thing to see support, and it's really a horrific thing for me to see what's going on the other side of it. So it's a heartbreak right now, but it is something I truly support, and my heart is 100% with Israel and its people.
Let me ask you a question with with all going on, and I will say that just like Lalo, I've got actually 2 of my closest friends are Jewish, and we literally just they're like brothers to me. I kid around with them saying, "Yeah, I'm your token Gentile for the family there." So. But
that's what I say too.
and then the other would be is like, okay, I picked up some kosher bacon for you. So you're like, yeah, right. But seriously, the upbringing that you just went through with, especially from your religion and all those. It sounds like there's a lot of, I know in Judaism there's a lot of this, but there's a lot of, it teaches you to be self-disciplined. It teaches you to be disciplined in just interacting with the things that you need to do and all that. Do you, would you give some of that discipline training in helping you as you've worked through your education and as well as your career?
Sure. I think it all kind of interrelates in that it helps you also not lose focus of other things that are important in your life. I mean, law school and school period, it can be all consuming, and as can work. And it's important to me specifically to take the day for Rosh Hashanah, take the day or 2 days for Yom Kippur, you know, to get out and to celebrate and to realize how important their religion is. So I think Shabbat, when I truly kept it specifically, I had a hard stop at work before sundown and physically went to ensure that I had a Shabbat dinner. And I think it was a nice time in that it specifically forced you to have that discipline to separate and to have Shabbat dinner. We're trying to implement that again now with our crazy work lives and to give that kind of normalcy to our daughter as well, which is a big deal. So I think I love that aspect of religion, and I think it brings you kind of at peace with the fact that there's more to life than just work, because us in the trade world, it's crazy. Our lives are crazy on a day-to-day. There is always something insane going on in the customs and trade world. We're always fighting fires. There's always an emergency of some sorts. We're always working on with a flame, you know, there's always a cape and a flame is what it feels like on a day-to-day. And there's always crazy deadlines with whatever they may be. And there's just so much back and forth. So I think it's important to realize that there's more to life.
With your stepfather being such an entrepreneur and working so hard, I'm sure there was a lot of challenges to apparently help you set some goals. Or was it your mother, or was it, you mentioned your grandmother was a heavy influence? What got you to where you're focused? You are laser focused, Jen. I have seen you with your postings. I've seen you with some of your activities. You're an absolute pleasure to be around. Well, that didn't just happen. I mean, it's like, yeah, you've got a great personality, but when talking with you, you obviously are prepared. And, not only does your knowledge of whatever topic you're talking about is obviously deep, but it's like you have a broad base of things that you're able to, eloquently discuss some things. So what got you to where you're driving there? It's like you're putting things in perspective. It's like, you know what? I need to stop the goofy stuff. Let me focus on what I need to do. What got you prompted in that?
So I started undergrad without a clear focus in any way. I was a public relations major with minors in business and photography. It was like an all around, all over the place. The business aspect was always something I was interested in. I was always really big into internships, and I highly advocate for anyone who is in an educational institution these days or not to get real life experience. To me, that is huge, because in schools, I've taught, I've been a professor, I get it. And I tried to bring the real world into my classroom as much as I possibly could. I made my students develop their own business. But when I was in school, they teach you, whatever they teach you, but it's not necessarily the real world. You're not necessarily advocating on behalf of clients. Even in great schools with trade education, you may be learning about the case and reading about cases, but you're not practically fighting. You're not in it. The actual being in it is a huge deal. So when I was in undergrad, I had many internships in public relations. And in my last internship, it was cool. We were writing press releases for major sports teams and doing all sorts of cool campaigns. And they said to me, "So do you want to apply for a job?" And I was like, "Oh, I've never had to apply. Like, it's always worked, Like, I walked into Ben & Jerry's at 16. I met the owner and she was like, "Hey, want a job?" And I was like, "Hey, sure. I'll start scooping ice cream tomorrow." And I had a job the next day. And that was my first experience getting a job. So I never, I walked in for internships and I had the internship by the end of it. There was never a formal application process. So I was like, "Oh, an application process. Interesting." I was like, "I didn't know you guys hated me. I thought we were cool." And then I was like, "Okay, let me see the job description and give me intel and let's work this out." And I looked at it and it was $20,000 a year. Now, I went to University of Miami for undergrad. If you know anything about University of Miami, you know that college tuition for 1 year, even 1,000 years ago when I went, was more than $20,000 a year. And I was like, "Oh my God. Why did my career advisors never yell at me to tell me about what the real world is like?" And I felt a little defeated at that stage. And I said, "Oh my God, I really need to rework what the hell I'm doing with my life, because 20 grand a year isn't going to cut it for anybody. That's not enough to physically live off of." It's like, all right, I really need to rethink. I love the marketing side. I love the PR side. Photography was always a passion. I can play in a dark room, and I love the business side, but I've got to do something else, because making 20 grand a year, what they told me was, you never know when you get really great at this and can become an owner of a company, you can make up to 75 grand a year. I was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
I was like, why are these not conversations that people are having while they're talking to their career advisors in advance of picking a freaking major? Let me show you what median and high, low salaries are for this region. That should be a standard part of the discussion. The fact that I had to learn that while asking to apply for a job, I was like, wow, I have messed up. It's like, I spent a whole lot of money on this education, and what am I going to do with it? So I started saying, okay, what's next? What am I going to do next? And I started looking at grad school options, business school, and then law school. And the more and more I read about being a lawyer, going to law school, the more and more I said, wow, I don't mind reading this. This is pretty cool. And And I was not an avid reader at any point. So this was finally my first kind of foray into, all right, I'm reading a gazillion pages and I'm not dying. I'm not bored to tears. I don't want to shoot myself. Like, this is pretty good. I can do this. I started looking at law schools, started looking at the LSAT and the process. And while I was in law school, I had 12 internships. So I think in terms of what you're talking about, Andy, my work ethic has always been a little ridiculous. It's always been a lot more than the average bear. And to me, my word is my bond. If I say I'm going to do something, if I don't do it right then and there, it's not happening. So you'll always see me specifically keeping my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And that's a rare trait these days. I don't understand why, but my father has always said to me, especially growing up, it was a big deal for him. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. If I don't do it, like, I'm dead or the world stopped, like something bad had to have happened for me to tell you I'm going to do something and for it not to happen. So I was always taught that your word is your absolute bond. And that's what you have. You have your reputation and your word. And once you screw that up, what do you have left? So to me, it's being able to do something and then love what you do. That's another added blessing.
So you decided you're going to go to law school. At what point between that and when you actually passed the bar exam or whatever, did you decide, okay, it's international trade? Was it an accident or one of those 12 internships, or how did that happen?
One. Okay. You're right. So when I started law school, I didn't know what law really meant or what the practice was. I was an Ally McBeal lover, a Law and Order lover, and it's TV. It's not the real world. I love Suits. I love all the legal shows and I'm glued to them, but it's not the real world in our day to day. So I had internships with judges and I saw criminal, I saw civil, I saw real estate, entertainment law, landlord tenant, like you name it, for all the different aspects, because I needed to understand what I didn't want to do. And I think that's one of the most important lessons when you're trying to figure out what your calling is and what you really want to do, is to learn, importantly, what you have no freaking interest in, what bores you to tears or what breaks your heart open. Like, I sat in a courtroom listening to death penalty cases and what these people were convicted of, and I just wanted to die in the side. And I was like, I can't listen to this. I can't see this. So right then and there, you can't deal with personal injury if you can't see blood. You can't deal with criminal law if you can't see blood. Like, that takes out two big core areas of law that are gone. So I realized that I was not a courtroom person. I was more of an administrative law person. I wanted to fight on paper and not in a courtroom. So that also takes away a lot of areas of law. So I think it's, once you start figuring out what you don't want to do, that helps. And my last internship was actually an accident. So in law school, I actually paid to be an intern. So a lot of people have comments and feedback about programs like this because there are a lot of movements for interns to get paid. And in reality, you don't necessarily know what you're doing and have a whole lot of value to add yet. You're learning and trying to soak up whatever you can like a sponge. But I paid college, law school tuition to be an intern. And my last internship was at Becker and Polyakov, where I started my career. And I thought it was going to be in the business department. And I walked in and it was international. And I was like, oh, okay, what's that? And I didn't really understand what that truly meant at that time. And it wound up being one of those areas where once you were in it, every day was a little different. It was always crazy. You were always learning something new. Even almost 20 years in, every day, I'm consistently learning something new. You're consistently brought back to the regs and statutes. You're consistently saying, oh, God, that's right. Let me relearn this. And you have to look at 18,000 things again and again and again. And every day there's something crazy and new going on. I mean, in the last 5 years, what's gone on with China, and everybody having to learn exclusions, and now what's going on with forced labor. There's every day you have to keep your eyes open and learn something new and be willing to embrace the learning of something new, which is what I love. It's not monotonous. Every day isn't the same. So when I started the practice, I fell in love with it and said, oh my God, how long is it going to take me to really understand this? Like, when I grew up on Miami Beach, our balcony overlooked Port Miami. I had no idea what we were overlooking. I didn't understand containers and gantry cranes. I didn't understand how port operated. I didn't understand anything. Why would I? I mean, the average person doesn't know what a container is and how goods actually physically get to their store. They don't care. They just want the goods in their store and they want Amazon to get it to them now, you know? They don't necessarily think about it. And I was very much amongst the masses. I didn't know what an HTS was. And ask our neighbors, you know, how many of them know anything about international trade? Nobody does. So within 5 years in Florida, they have what's called the board certification exam, where you can hold yourself out as an expert. So going full circle to where we kind of started, I'm a woman, I'm short. You know, I very much don't look like a white American. I look like something else. So it's you know, you have to figure out how you're going to enable people to trust what you say and the advice that you give with what you look like and what you have. So board certification was an important tool for me to help distinguish myself as an expert in the profession, given that I'm a short female. And people have a lot of questions and will want to be sure that you're the right person to get the job done. So what I personally love most about this area is that I can be talking about FDA, CPSC, EPA, FMC, TTB, TSA, all of the different federal government agencies on any given day. We can talk about ITAR, we could talk about BIS, we could talk about any of these conversations with these other agencies. And I understand the underlying issues that need to happen and what we need to do to maintain compliance. And importantly, most people come to me when they screw up, when something's wrong and when there's a fire, which is typically when people want to pay lawyers, right? I mean, that's not exactly an unknown for everyone. But to me, being able to truly take courses, now give courses, and being able to truly understand how our government works and how our federal agencies work, and more importantly, the underlying issues that our clients need to face, that's what kind of keeps me going personally. I think all of those things are really interesting, and I think it's always fun to learn new things. And if you don't have an open mind, you're not open to learning new things on an everyday basis, you're not going to survive in our crazy international trade world.
There's so much stuff that is going on in today's world. What is an average day for you? I mean, we could get into a few things and into details of, you know, this issue, that issue. It's like, how do you keep yourself up to speed? I mean, there's only so much a person can actually read. So do you have your staff help you on some of this? What is an average day for you?
Sure. I, like everyone else, have a whole lot of content that comes to my inbox that I look at, and I see a lot of government agency sourced info as well that I'm consistently looking at. We've got a whole database of sources that we look at and that I have my marketing team look at. So my marketing team on a daily basis is looking at all of the sources. On a weekly basis, we're putting together the content of what's relevant from the different government agencies. Like Customs just came up with an e-petition filing, and they didn't post a notice, but I wound up seeing it from one of my 1,000 sources and then started looking into it and asking questions. And now we just posted a blog on it, and that's how content is created. So that is always a part of the day. Then there's organizational involvement. I'm heavily involved in 10 different organizations in typical board positions on majority of those. So could be communicating with anyone from, for example, the Florida Customs Brokers and Forwarders, and planning different events and educational events. We just had one on FMC related topic. Now we're having the next one on FTZ related topic, and so on. And then there's obviously client work and client onboarding. So part of the day is client consults and part of the day is client meetings, and balancing everything in between. So the marketing is a huge part of our practice, and we're always looking at new content. And that's how I try to stay abreast of what's going on. Like for FDA, we're on top of MOCRA and like what's going on with the cosmetic industry and so on. And every day there is something. So I try to make sure that we are following all of the things that we need to follow that are core to our clients and our practice areas, and publishing those as well as servicing our clients. So the balance of all of that with running a firm, with managing other attorneys, with managing our practice and keeping business ongoing is always a fun challenge.
And Jen, so we hear, like, I know you're very active in a lot of, even outside of the boards that you talked about, like trade boards, but you're also active, in like the humane society, stuff like that in the community.
And I'm also room mom, Lalo.
Oh, you have to be a room mom. Those are fun. I used to be, I was in a program where it was called, oh gosh, they're going to kill me. My kids were in elementary school, but it's where dads would go once a month to read books with them.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I've actually been advocating to get us back in the classroom, but the current state of affairs outside is not making that easy. But it would be nice to be able to see more of that. I'd love to see parents back in the classroom and reading. I love seeing those photos. So
yeah, so that's what I was. I was the dad's reading books or something. I don't remember. It was something funny like that. But anyway, yeah. So that I used to go and read stories and stuff to them. But anyway, so let's go back a little bit. We're talking about like all your wins and how your advocacy and everything. But let's learn a little bit about how something may have made you grow, right? I mean, like surely there was something that early, especially in your career, because you're barely getting started, that maybe you made a mistake or you something we learn from our mistakes, right?
Life-defining moment.
Like, was there something like, like something that might have happened that you might have done wrong or missed, or something that you learned from and made you who you may be today? Even, I mean, I don't know. I mean, who knows?
So I want to go back to the animals for 2 seconds because I am obsessed with the Humane Society. I'm a big rescue dog lover. We have Lucky, who's my little heart and soul. He's my second fur baby. Our first, unfortunately, like every dog does, unfortunately passed away. So we do the walk for the animals every year, and it's actually tomorrow. So the walk for the animals, they have all over all humane societies. It's a great way to support your local humane society as well. And a little known fact that most people don't know, Lalo, is you can tell the humane society what breed you're actually interested in, and they'll put your name and the breed on a list. And if that breed comes in, they will notify you. So we hear a lot of, well, I'm not sure if I should go to the humane society because I only want a whatever animal. Well, the humane society will actually help you by looking out for that specific animal. So just want to put that out there because you can adopt and not shop and still save a life. And that's a big deal. And in terms of defining moments, there's a case that stands out that I'm going to talk to you guys about next time on our crazy stories. But there are cases that really define you that in my specific career path, the ones that really make a big difference to me that have shocked me to my core are the ones that have criminal implications as well, where you're always second guessing if there's anything different you could have done to make HSI not have such blood in the water and teeth in the particular instance. And there's a case that stands out for me specifically where I got so personally invested in the particular case. Like the family became close to me, and I was feeling their particular cause on such a deep level. Like I still think about them many, many, many years later and their particular cause. So I think when you get too emotionally invested in a case, that's not exactly a great thing, so that you can stay objective within the case is a biggie for me. So I try to not only have compassion where I need to, but to more so stay objective to give the best advice to your particular client on whatever the crazy situation is. We are seeing a lot of crazy enforcement issues these days. So I think it's a biggie. And for that particular client, I'm always curious about how else it could have gone. What other results could have happened. Ultimately, it wound up being a mostly success story. I know that after the fact, the family had reached out consistently and said that a lot of really positive things about the way in which it was handled, but I'm always second guessing, like, could anything have been better? Could we have done anything differently? And could anything have been better? So I try to analyze the hell out of cases as I'm going through them to make sure that we're getting the best result that we can get for the client and not leaving anything on the table where we don't have to while we're going through the case. And that's kind of stuck with me in that regard.
Right. Well, that is something there that anybody that is an effective attorney or professional in whatever profession you're in is, okay, I always say this: you enjoy the win, but you learn from your losses. However, at the same time, even with your wins, if you're analyzing it, woulda, coulda, shoulda, is there a way to have done something better or come back and look at it? So you're just refining your craft, if you will. And I salute you on that one. What about your legacy? What would you like to have as your legacy, Jen, in whether it's in professionally or whether it's the home? Probably is going to be more family related when it comes down to it. But, what about that?
It's a great question. I'm just starting to think about that. Apparently, I'm starting to get older. Who knew? So I know it's insane. This whole aging thing is not cool. Not cool. But as I think about what's next, I mean, I would love my daughter to take over a practice, but I think I've got many, many years, and I waited way too long to have a child in life to make that an easy transition. But it would be really cool to see DTL live on post me, if that is a possibility. That would be really, really cool. Not sure that that's something that can or will happen. Nobody knows. We'll never know. But that would be an interesting, really cool thing in my book. Otherwise, I want to ensure everybody has a home, no matter what, with or without me. I don't know how many more years I'll do this. I would say I don't know what I would do if I'm not doing this. So to me, that's the harder part to think about. Like, does anybody think about retiring or like what that would be like? Like, I know I play the lotto, but what happens if I win? I don't know. What happens if any of us win? What do you do? So they say that those that actually quit their jobs spend all their money and wind up penniless. So don't want that. and I think there are instances of our day to day, and that I really do love. And I think it's focusing more on those and spending more time on those. But I really hope that a lot of what I'm doing now is spending time, for example, writing for Bloomberg and trying to keep the practice alive that way, so that those starting in the industry as well. I've spent a lot of time writing all sorts of chapters of books for the Florida Bar and for the American Bar Association and Bloomberg. We have 20 plus articles, working on a few right now as well, where we're really trying to get a practitioner's guide for like all sorts of aspects of the import and export practice out there, so that younger practitioners and experienced practitioners both have a really good avenue to navigate what we're up against and what we're dealing with in the particular practice. So I think these are cool practical guides that I hope also live on. Obviously, everything in our industry changes over time, but I think these are good kind of solid foundational pieces that I also hope will live on. I hope organizations that I've been a part of, like the Organization of Women in International Trade, I've spent 20 years, advocating for and being a president of locally and internationally. And it's an organization I really want to see live on. And it really does help foster the advancement of women in international trade. So I hope I've left a legacy there in regards to my leadership of the organization and our international meetings. Like, we had a really cool conference in Kenya where we did a business development kind of workshop for 75 women in Africa, teaching them really amazing tools to showcase their products and sell their products, not only across Africa, but in the world. And I think there's a lot of young people that we hope to have touched at some point in time and to spark an interest in international trade. I know I've had a whole lot of interns, and I'm not sure that everybody really loves international trade. Once you're in it, I feel like it's love-hate. You're either all in and you're obsessed and you love it, or you're like, this is crazy. The people are crazy. The things are crazy. The environment's crazy. It's too much. It's a lot of crazy. And you have to like love the craziness and or be all in or be all out. I feel like within our worlds, the people that are great at it are really all in, and we live and get immersed in it. So I hope that in some way, shape, or form, I leave a little mark on this crazy world.
Well, with that, let me also throw this out: is what would be your advice for maybe the top 3 actions or something that a young woman or young man that's coming up, what would be the top 3 things that you could recommend for them to do?
Sure. Number one, if they're interested in international trade, is to start forming a network, start getting involved in an organization. Pick one and don't just be a member. Get involved. Do something, mean something, meaning, for example, Florida customs brokers, national customs brokers, everybody needs volunteers. There is no nonprofit organization that's going to say, no, we're really not interested in your help at this time. We're good. We've got it all covered. Nobody would ever say that. The first day that I walked into an OWIP meeting a gazillion years ago, I spoke to the president and I said, I want to get involved. And she said, great, you're on the board. I was like, whoa, that's cool. And that's how I treated it when I was president. I know, imagine. And that's how much board members and volunteers are always needed. So I highly encourage people that are starting out, whether or not you're in school, out of school, starting out, whatever it is, pick an organization to get involved in and do what you say you're going to do. Keep your word. Be a rock. Get it done. I find that a lot of people have great intentions, but they don't have the follow through. And it's a great way to start being somebody that can be taken seriously. Like if somebody volunteers to help an organization and they say they're going to do social media or a marketing piece or help with registration for an event or whatever it is, and when they show up on time and are actually helpful, then you start counting on them and they become a person that you can trust. And every relationship that winds up being a fruitful one for anyone, it starts with somebody that you can trust. So I've developed a really cool core group of women and men that are supportive. And I think if you're a woman, don't discount men in the profession either. Some of my greatest allies and advocates have been men in the profession that have stood by me and that really work to advocate for me and to work on getting me, any assistance clients or so on, and to help me work on my brand and so on. It's not just women helping women. Unfortunately, there are instances that everyone can display or discuss that show your own sex trying to tear you down. We all have that, whether it's women or men or so on. But in terms of going back to what concrete things you should do is, while you're in law school, I beg of you to go to private industry and to really try to get that internship in private sector. I see people coming to me after the fact telling me they've been in the public sector for however long, they've never had private experience, but now they want a job, but they have no idea what billing is like. They have no idea what client service is like. They don't understand client expectations yet. It's a whole nother world. It takes 3 to 6 months for us to train somebody into this particular world. I have a lot more empathy and a lot more want to hire if somebody works, for example, as a law clerk first, and there really is a great, what I call give a shit factor for that particular individual. They're really gung-ho, they're in it to win it, and they want to stay in the practice, then that's a lot better. And even better if they work on projects and actually complete their deadlines, mean what they say what they mean, and there's somebody that's genuine and can get it done. They get the job done and they care about the work product. So get involved in organizations, build a network, learn how to be of value to other people in your world, make fruitful introductions. Like I hear somebody that should be a good connection, I'm happy to introduce people without an expectation of something in return. And I think there are a lot of great people in our networks that can be connected. So it's always not only thinking about yourself, but also thinking about what you can do for others, and you're hopeful that those connections will be fruitful for other people. And then people will look back when you ask for a connection or you ask for something. It's not always that you're taking from somebody. You have things to give as well. I think that's a great thing. And the last is always read and keep in touch with what's going on. Pick a news source, pick a couple, especially this day and age, and learn from both sides of the aisle and try to stay on top. And becoming an expert in a specific category, like international trade, is overwhelming. You have 1,000 different focus areas you can be a part of. You can litigate, not litigate. You can be an expert in AD/CVD. You can be an expert in just FDA, just CBP, just one of the 3-letter, 4-letter federal government agencies. But to me, it was important for me to be well versed in a multitude and the actual background of it all, and then to have a great team around me that can supplement any of the specific details that are missing, so that I know enough about anti-dumping to be dangerous, but I know that I'm not going before the Department of Commerce anytime soon, and I've got a great person to do that on my team. But I know when to look out for it for a client. So building your network, becoming a part of an organization, keeping your word as your bond, working hard, having a work ethic, period. I would love to see more of that. Now we're seeing people create interviews and not show up, like, more and more. It's an interesting environment right now where, I say I'm going to do something and maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'll see how I feel that day. Like that doesn't work for this environment when we have promises to keep for our particular clients. And I love the internship aspect, and I wish more people would take that seriously and work through that. And that's something that we happily offer for 2Ls for summer internship programs. So if anybody has a desire to be involved in international trade, then a little shameless plug to contact us, and to please don't contact me when you're a 2-year practicing and you've done 0 internships and have no idea how to bill. But if you're a 2L in law school and you want some practical experience and want to learn the world, then we're happy to help. I think international trade, I've always said, in customs in our world is a sexy world. It's a nonstop, crazy, fun world. And it's a world that I do highly encourage more people to get interested and involved in. There are so many different areas of the practice that are so interesting, and you don't necessarily have to start working for the government. That is a wonderful career path to start with, where you have government experience and then come into the private sector thereafter, and many do that. That is one mechanism in, but another is really through that kind of law clerk program. And if you see any, I know a lot of DC firms, for example, don't have programs like that, but I think a program like ours, where we do, is something that I wish more law students realized how awesome that was, and how good that can be for a potential career path as well. And I beg of people to volunteer with organizations and boards. Like FCBF is an all volunteer board. Imagine all volunteers putting on programs. So people are more important now than ever to take a little bit of time to do something that's good for your industry as well, and that also winds up being something that's good for you as an individual. I think I'm seeing more and more people that really just want to get home, and I don't know how we get back to that spirit of giving, but I'm hoping we get a little bit more of that in the years to come. Thank you so much for having me on here. I really do appreciate the time, guys. Andy and Lalo, you guys are always a pleasure. So now, are you going to start calling me Walensky, or am I still going to be Diaz too?
You're still going to be Diaz.
Folks, we're going to turn the show back over to, or your day back over to you, because this has been a great show, and it's something that Jen Diaz is somebody that one, she's very highly respected. Well, you got a taste of why, because got to hear a little bit of her background, and also with that, we're going to have her contact information on our show notes. So that'll be something, if you're interested, you can reach out to her and all. And the only other thing I would add, Jen, to everything that you said that I think is fantastic, is when you're reaching out and networking with people, see if you can find 1 or 2 people to be a mentor to you. And because they will be more than happy to give you career guidance and whatnot. So with that, folks, have a great day.
Thank you very much for joining us. SimplyTrade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor SimplyTrade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at SimplyTradePod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. SimplyTrade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by SimplyTrade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. you should seek appropriate counsel for your own situation. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.